Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, recently announced a significant shift in the company's approach to content moderation, stating that Meta will end its fact-checking program in the United States and replace it with a community-driven model reminiscent of X, formerly Twitter, community notes. This announcement, made on January 7, 2025, is seen as a response to the evolving political and social landscape, particularly following recent elections, which Zuckerberg describes as a cultural tipping point toward prioritizing free speech. Key changes in content moderation. 1. Transition to community notes. The existing fact-checking program, which relied on over 90 independent third-party fact-checkers, will be replaced by a community-based system. This new approach allows users to contribute corrections and engage in the moderation of content. Zuckerberg argued that traditional fact-checking has led to perceived biases and diminished public trust, thus necessitating this change. 2. Changes to moderation policies. Alongside the shift to community notes, Meta will modify its content moderation policies, particularly regarding politically sensitive subjects. Zuckerberg indicated that Meta would allow more political content to circulate on Facebook and Instagram, reversing previous restrictions that had been implemented due to user concerns about stress and misinformation. 3. Critique of fact-checking. In his announcement, Zuckerberg criticized the previous fact-checking system as politically biased, a sentiment that resonates with many conservative users who have accused tech companies of censorship. However, experts have pointed out that professional fact-checkers provide essential scrutiny against misinformation, a critical component that may be lacking in a community-driven model. 4. Concerns about misinformation. Critics express apprehension that the community notes system may not deliver the same consistency and expertise as traditional fact-checkers, potentially leading to an increase in misinformation. While the expectation is that this model could produce a higher volume of fact checks, the accuracy and reliability of user-generated contributions are significant concerns. Reactions from experts and media. The announcement has drawn a mixed response from various experts and media outlets. NBC News highlighted skepticism regarding Zuckerberg's motivations, suggesting that the shift is an attempt to cater to political sentiments, particularly in light of the incoming administration of President-elect Donald Trump. In contrast, the BBC acknowledged the potential benefits of a community-driven approach if executed properly, but reiterated the importance of professional oversight to combat harmful misinformation effectively. Historical context. Meta's fact-checking program, launched in 2016, aimed to combat misinformation through third-party organizations certified by various fact-checking networks. This program had evolved to include content from Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, utilizing a range of organizations including PolitiFact and FactCheck.org. However, as political polarization intensified, criticism regarding perceived biases in fact-checking grew, particularly from conservative circles. Implications of the new model. 1. Potential for increased engagement. Meta's new community-driven approach is expected to enhance engagement, with the possibility of generating hundreds of fact checks daily, similar to the volume seen on X. However, studies indicate that a significant proportion of proposed community notes remain unused, raising questions about the efficacy of crowdsourced moderation. 2. Trade-offs in content moderation. Zuckerberg acknowledged that the shift to community notes will likely result in catching less harmful content, a trade-off that some experts find alarming. The decision to relax rules around politically divisive topics could lead to increased exposure to misinformation and harmful narratives. 3. Need for a balanced approach. Many experts argue that while community notes can serve as a useful component in the fight against misinformation, they should not replace the rigorous standards upheld by professional fact-checkers. The consensus suggests that a hybrid model incorporating both community input and expert oversight may be the most effective way to manage misinformation on social media platforms. Conclusion. Mark Zuckerberg's announcement marks a pivotal moment in Meta's approach to content moderation, reflecting broader societal debates about free speech, misinformation, and the role of social media in democratic discourse. As the company transitions to a community notes model, the implications for content accuracy, user trust, and the overall information ecosystem remain contentious and warrant close scrutiny. The effectiveness of this new approach will ultimately depend on how well it can balance the need for free expression with the imperative to combat harmful misinformation. Mark Zuckerberg's decision to replace Meta's fact-checking program with a community-driven model has sparked a robust debate revealing several counterintuitive aspects of this shift. 1. Community-driven misinformation management. The shift towards a community notes system similar to X's model is premised on the belief that user participation can enhance content moderation. While intuitively one might think that more voices would lead to better accuracy, studies indicate that a significant portion of community notes, over 90%, go unused. This raises the question of whether a community-driven approach can effectively combat misinformation, as many accurate contributions may never reach a wider audience. 2. Perception of bias. Zuckerberg's assertion that fact-checkers have fostered political bias and eroded public trust is counterintuitive when considering the role of professional fact-checkers in maintaining standards of accuracy. While the community notes system is touted as a solution to perceived bias, experts argue that community-driven systems often lack the necessary consistency and objectivity that trained fact-checkers provide. This suggests that the perceived bias may stem not from the fact-checkers themselves but rather from the political landscape that shapes public perception. 3. Free speech versus misinformation. Zuckerberg's framing of the changes as a restoration of free speech contradicts the potential for increased misinformation in a less regulated environment. By relaxing moderation policies and relying more on community input, the very free expression he champions may be undermined by the prevalence of false information. This creates a paradox where the pursuit of free speech could lead to an environment rife with misleading content, ultimately diminishing the overall quality of discourse. 4. Engagement versus accuracy. The expectation that community notes will lead to higher engagement and more rapid fact-checking is at odds with the potential for decreased accuracy. While community-driven systems can theoretically scale to cover more content faster, there is a risk that the quality of information may suffer. This highlights a tension between the desire for increased user engagement and the need for accurate, reliable information. 5. Political motivations. Critics suggest that Zuckerberg's move is more about pandering to a specific political agenda than genuinely improving misinformation management. The alignment with conservative sentiments regarding perceived censorship raises questions about the motivations behind the shift. This counterintuitive angle suggests that the changes may not be as altruistic as framed but rather a strategic maneuver to appease a politically charged audience. 6. Impact on moderation practices. Zuckerberg's acknowledgement that the new approach will catch less bad stuff points to a trade-off between reducing censorship and allowing more harmful content to circulate. This admission is counterintuitive to the idea that the community notes system will enhance the quality of information on the platform. The relaxation of rules around politically sensitive topics could create an environment where misinformation flourishes, contradicting the goal of responsible content sharing. 7. Historical context and regression. The historical evolution of Meta's content moderation strategies illustrates a regression rather than an advancement in combating misinformation. The original fact-checking program was designed to address the challenges posed by misinformation, and its dismantling in favor of a community model could be seen as a step backward. This counterintuitive perspective highlights how the pursuit of a more open platform may inadvertently lead to greater challenges in managing false information. In conclusion, while Zuckerberg's announcement is framed as a progressive step towards enhancing free speech and reducing bias, the counterintuitive implications of this shift raise critical questions about the effectiveness and consequences of community-driven misinformation management. The potential for increased misinformation, decreased accuracy, and political motivations behind the changes suggest a complex landscape that requires careful consideration beyond the surface-level appeal of community involvement. Mark Zuckerberg's announcement regarding Meta's transition from a traditional fact-checking program to a community-driven model raises numerous critical points that many may overlook, which could have far-reaching implications for misinformation, public trust, and the overall landscape of social media moderation. Significant content overlooked. 1. Critique of bias in fact-checking. One of the most significant aspects of Zuckerberg's announcement is his explicit criticism of the existing fact-checking system, which he claims has been too politically biased. This framing resonates with a long-standing narrative among certain political groups, particularly conservatives, who argue that mainstream tech platforms suppress their viewpoints. What is often overlooked in the discussions surrounding this shift is the nuanced understanding of bias in fact-checking. While Zuckerberg's claims suggest a sweeping dismissal of professional fact-checkers, the reality is that these organizations often operate under rigorous standards and methodologies aimed at mitigating bias. By positioning the change as a move toward greater neutrality, Zuckerberg may inadvertently undermine the invaluable role that expert fact-checkers play in identifying and correcting misinformation. 2. The assumption of user competence. The transition to a community notes model assumes that users can effectively evaluate and correct misinformation. While community-driven models like X's have shown some promise, studies indicate that a significant percentage of proposed corrections go unused. This raises concerns about the reliability of community input in moderating misinformation. Critics argue that the reliance on user-generated content lacks the consistency and expertise that professional fact-checkers provide. The potential for misinformation to proliferate unchecked in a system that relies on volunteer contributions is a significant concern that merits deeper scrutiny. 3. Impact on content moderation policies. Zuckerberg's announcement also hints at a broader shift in content moderation policies, particularly regarding politically sensitive topics. By relaxing restrictions on certain types of content, Meta may inadvertently create an environment where harmful misinformation can spread more freely. The implications of this shift are profound, as it could lead to increased polarization and the normalization of extremist views. The decision to prioritize free speech over meticulous moderation raises questions about the responsibilities of social media platforms in curbing harmful narratives. 4. Potential for increased misinformation. The community notes system is designed to handle a higher volume of misinformation corrections than the previous model. However, the effectiveness of this approach is contingent upon user engagement and the quality of contributions. Critics express concern that without sufficient oversight, the community notes could become a breeding ground for misinformation rather than a corrective tool. The risk lies in the potential for false narratives to gain momentum if not adequately addressed by informed contributors. 5. Long-term consequences for trust. Trust in social media platforms is already fragile, and Zuckerberg's decision to eliminate fact-checkers could exacerbate this issue. The perception that misinformation may go unchecked could further alienate users who rely on these platforms for reliable information. The significance of this loss of trust cannot be underestimated. It could lead to a decline in user engagement and a shift toward alternative platforms perceived as more reliable. Understanding the long-term ramifications of this trust erosion is crucial for both Meta and its user base. 6. Political ramifications. The timing of this announcement coinciding with a significant political shift in the U.S. suggests that Zuckerberg's motivations may be influenced by the current political climate. His comments about working with the incoming Trump administration to promote free speech globally indicate a strategic alignment with the interests of certain political factions. This alignment could lead to further scrutiny of Meta's role in shaping political discourse and the ethical implications of prioritizing free speech over accurate information dissemination. Why these points are significant. These overlooked aspects are significant because they encapsulate the complexities and potential dangers inherent in Meta's new approach to misinformation. The shift away from expert fact-checking toward a community-driven model could fundamentally alter how information is shared and moderated on social media platforms. As misinformation continues to pose challenges to public discourse, understanding the implications of these changes is vital for users, policymakers, and the platforms themselves. Moreover, the dialogue surrounding fact-checkers and community notes reflects broader societal tensions regarding free speech, censorship, and the role of technology in shaping public opinion. As social media platforms navigate these tensions, the choices they make will have lasting impacts on the information ecosystem, user trust, and the integrity of public discourse. In conclusion, while Zuckerberg's announcement may be positioned as a progressive step toward greater free expression, the potential consequences of this shift warrant careful consideration. The complexity of misinformation, user responsibility, and the role of expert moderation must be at the forefront of discussions about the future of social media. 1. Shift to community notes model. Meta's decision to transition from a traditional fact-checking program to a community-driven model resembling X's formerly Twitter community notes is a pivotal change in content moderation. This shift is aimed at addressing perceived biases in fact-checking and restoring public trust. The community notes system allows users to contribute corrections, potentially increasing engagement and responsiveness to misinformation. However, this model raises concerns about the accuracy and reliability of information as it relies heavily on user input rather than expert evaluation. 2. Changing content moderation policies. Zuckerberg's announcement includes significant adjustments to content moderation policies, particularly concerning politically sensitive topics. By allowing more political content to circulate on Meta's platforms, the company is responding to a political climate that favors free speech and less restrictive moderation. This reorientation may lead to an increase in the visibility of controversial content and could contribute to the spread of misinformation, especially as Meta acknowledges that the new approach will result in catching less bad stuff. 3. Criticism and concerns over misinformation. The shift away from professional fact-checking has sparked criticism from experts who argue that community-driven systems lack the consistency, objectivity, and expertise necessary to combat harmful misinformation effectively. While community notes may allow for a higher volume of fact checks, there are doubts about their reliability and the potential for misinformation to proliferate without the oversight of trained fact-checkers. Critics emphasize that professional scrutiny is essential for addressing the most dangerous narratives and maintaining a credible information ecosystem. For political implications and trust issues, Zuckerberg's framing of the transition as a response to political biases in fact-checking reflects broader tensions in the discourse around free speech and censorship in social media. By positioning the changes as a move toward prioritizing free expression, Meta is attempting to align itself with certain political sentiments, particularly from conservative circles that have long criticized perceived censorship by tech companies. This political backdrop complicates the issue of trust in the platform's content moderation practices and raises questions about the motivations behind the shift, with experts suggesting that public trust in both community notes and the platform itself may be at stake. 1. The case of the Pizzagate conspiracy. 2016. The Pizzagate conspiracy emerged during the 2016 U.S. presidential election, suggesting that a Washington, D.C. pizzeria was the center of a child trafficking ring involving high-profile politicians. This false narrative spread rapidly through social media platforms, primarily Twitter and Facebook. Despite being debunked, the conspiracy led to significant real-world consequences, including an armed individual entering the pizzeria to investigate. The incident highlighted the challenges of misinformation in digital spaces and the responsibilities of platforms to manage false claims, similar to the discussions around Meta's fact-checking program. 2. The Cambridge Analytica scandal. 2016. This case involved the misuse of personal data from millions of Facebook users by Cambridge Analytica, a political consulting firm. The firm employed psychological profiling to target voters, raising questions about privacy, data ethics, and the influence of social media on elections. The fallout from this scandal led to congressional hearings where Mark Zuckerberg was questioned about Facebook's role in the spread of misinformation and manipulation of user data, paralleling current concerns about content moderation and the potential for misinformation under the new community-driven model. 3. The spread of misinformation during the COVID-19 pandemic 2020 to 2021. As the pandemic unfolded, social media platforms faced immense scrutiny for their handling of misinformation related to COVID-19, including false claims about the virus's origins, treatments, and vaccines. Facebook and Twitter implemented measures to curb misinformation through fact-checking partnerships and content removal policies. However, as the situation evolved, criticisms emerged regarding the perceived bias of fact-checkers, and calls for more user-driven moderation systems gained traction. This scenario resonates with Zuckerberg's recent announcement about shifting to a community notes model, reflecting ongoing debates about the best methods to manage misinformation effectively. The recent announcement by Mark Zuckerberg regarding Meta's shift from a traditional fact-checking model to a community-driven approach has significant implications for the future of social media content moderation and the handling of misinformation. As Meta embarks on this new path, several predictions can be made about its potential outcomes. 1. Increased user engagement and participation. By adopting a community notes model, Meta is likely to see an increase in user engagement. This approach encourages users to actively participate in content moderation, which may foster a sense of community and ownership over the information shared on the platform. Users may feel empowered to contribute to discussions about misinformation, leading to a more vibrant and dynamic online environment. 2. Rise in misinformation and polarization. While a community-driven model has the potential to enhance engagement, it may also lead to an increase in misinformation. Without the rigorous oversight of professional fact-checkers, the accuracy of information could suffer. Users may propagate false information believing it to be true due to the lack of expert verification. This could further exacerbate polarization, as communities may form around shared beliefs, reinforcing echo chambers and increasing division among differing viewpoints. 3. Challenges of moderation and quality control. The transition to community notes will likely present challenges in terms of moderation and quality control. The effectiveness of this system relies heavily on the willingness and ability of users to provide accurate and thoughtful corrections. As seen with X's community notes, a significant percentage of proposed notes go unused, which raises concerns about the overall quality and reliability of the corrections being made. This could lead to confusion and distrust among users about what constitutes credible information. 4. Evolving role of algorithms. Meta's reliance on algorithms to determine which community notes are highlighted will play a crucial role in shaping the information landscape on its platforms. The effectiveness of these algorithms in filtering out biased or unhelpful notes will be essential to maintain user trust. If users perceive the algorithm as favoring certain viewpoints or failing to adequately address misinformation, it could lead to dissatisfaction and further allegations of bias against Meta. 5. Diminish trust in platforms. As the credibility of information shared on Meta's platforms becomes increasingly reliant on community input, users may begin to question the trustworthiness of the content they encounter. The criticism of fact-checkers as biased may resonate with certain user groups. But if the community-driven system fails to deliver reliable corrections, overall trust in Meta could diminish. Users may seek alternative platforms that provide more stringent content moderation or fact-checking processes. 6. Political and regulatory scrutiny. Meta's decision to shift content moderation strategies could attract increased scrutiny from political entities and regulators. As misinformation continues to be a contentious issue, lawmakers may push for regulations that mandate more robust content moderation practices, especially concerning political content. Meta's approach could be perceived as a retreat from accountability, leading to potential legal and regulatory challenges. 7. Potential for innovation in misinformation management. despite the challenges. The community notes model could inspire innovative solutions in misinformation management. Social media platforms may explore hybrid models that combine community-driven corrections with professional oversight. Collaborations with academic institutions and independent fact-checking organizations could emerge to enhance the quality and accuracy of information shared on social media. 8. Impact on advertising and monetization. The changes in content moderation may also affect Meta's advertising model. Advertisers may become wary of placing ads on platforms perceived as havens for misinformation. If user trust declines, it could impact user engagement and subsequently advertising revenue. Meta may need to adapt its monetization strategies to ensure advertisers feel confident in the platform's credibility. 9. Global implications. Meta's shift could have global implications as other social media platforms observe the outcomes of this model. If successful, it may encourage similar changes in content moderation strategies worldwide. Conversely, if the model leads to a proliferation of misinformation, it could prompt a backlash against community-driven moderation on a global scale, influencing how platforms manage content in various cultural and political contexts. 10. Long-term evolution of social media dynamics. Ultimately, the move away from fact-checking towards community notes could signify a broader evolution in social media dynamics. As platforms grapple with the challenges of misinformation, user engagement and trust, the landscape of social media may shift towards more decentralized, user-driven models. This could redefine the relationship between users and platforms, altering how information is shared, consumed, and moderated in the digital age. In conclusion, Meta's transition to a community notes model presents both opportunities and challenges for the future of content moderation and misinformation management. While it could foster greater user engagement and innovation, it also raises concerns about the reliability of information and the potential for increased polarization. The effectiveness of this new approach will depend on how well Meta can navigate these complexities and the responses from users, regulators, and the broader social media landscape.